What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. We're going to recap Italy's game against Moldova today. You didn't see the game, and I'm sort of jealous for you. It's weird. If we won 2-0, but for some reason, Pete, it doesn't even feel like a win because we should have scored a lot more goals and should have played better than that. Would you agree?
100%, especially after losing 3-0
To Norway.
So I think as far as a performance, ultimately you get the 3 points, but as far as a performance, I was hoping for a much more dominant win and a response to, the first game.
The big problem is goal difference. It doesn't go to head-to-head. Since we lost to Norway, and Norway scoring a lot of goals, this was a game that we needed to score 4 or 5 at least. And we were just looking at some of the stats from Moldova. You were watching the highlights, and Moldova had 18 shots, 7 on target. And thankfully, the first goal that they scored was offside. It was rightfully offside. So I don't have many takeaways from this game specifically. A lot of players that are injured, just the lack of creativity. The first half was rough to watch. But it's Spalletti's last game. Spalletti, it was kind of crazy. Spalletti not resigned actually, he was fired. But he had to be the one that went into the press conference and announced that he was fired. He didn't have Gravina there to be able to do it. And ultimately, the Spalletti project was a failure. He made mistakes in the Euros. He did not correct those mistakes following there, and we've progressively gotten worse. And we seriously risk missing a third World Cup because, again, that first place goes through automatically. Norway's got first place at the moment. Second place goes to a playoff, and we know how we've done in recent years in playoffs. That's how we missed out in the last 2 World Cups. How do we reflect on Spalletti's time at Italy?
No, Spalletti, it was a failure. I mean, he said it himself after the Euro. He said he made a lot of mistakes. And then did he correct any mistakes? I don't know. He lost the last, before Norway, he lost 3 games, I think. He lost the last 3 games. The enthusiasm of the team. I was listening to some of the comments that they made. I mean, this team is. Some players don't want to go to the national team. I don't know if it's because of him. There is the coach. There's no locker room, and then also the character of Spalletti. To me, his character. He tried to reinvent the wheel. He puts players that they don't even play for their clubs, and he makes them start. He makes them play. I mean, I don't understand his philosophy of maybe it's good to coach Roma, Napoli, but is not at the national team level to select the players that to play in the national team.
I think there's a couple things wrong with Spalletti. I think he's had a big ego since coaching Italy. He's tried to run this like a club team. But in international football, in general, is much less tactical. You don't have as much time to play. There's already too many games. Then you don't have the players for that long. You need to just call up whoever's good, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, whether you work with them in the past. Whoever's in form, you call them up, regardless if you have a prior relationship with them, and you put them in a normal formation. And don't try to reinvent the wheel, like you just said. And ultimately, he's isolated everyone. Acerbi rejected the Italian national team. Orsolini was begging to be called for how long? He was refusing to call him up for such a long time. So even
what happened to Mancini?
He doesn't call him up. He doesn't call him up. And then he also had, remember in the Euros, he had that whole thing where he stopped all the players from playing PlayStation and not meeting in each other's rooms. I don't know. He overcomplicated the situation at the Italian national team, and there was no other decision but to fire him.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we have to also let's look at the overall situation where he got to the Italian national team through Roberto Mancini quitting or saying, okay, I resign, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. So he came in a delicate point for Italy, and I would have to say, one, thank you to Spalletti for coming in a delicate situation. Got us to the Euros, and then ultimately we saw how we performed. It was a very poor Italy team. I know we keep on saying we don't have the stars of the past, but, certain things as far as his ego. I also think his stubbornness at times, where Obviously there was a connection with him and Di Lorenzo since the Napoli days. But during the Euros, I remember that he was getting burnt every single game. And it's a matter of like, listen, you can like a player, but you ultimately have to do what's best for the situation currently. And I feel like Spalletti there lacked the ability to, just, again, as you mentioned, be able to just feel certain things, see who's hot in a national team. It's important that somebody feels, that they can give something. And he ultimately wasn't able to do that. And then obviously we missed another World Cup. And that would be really, really bad to miss another World Cup. So let's see how this Italy team is able to come back. I think, ultimately teams are not afraid to play Italy anymore. Mm-hmm. That's very evident. We said it with clubs, right? The club teams, but let's be honest, even with the Federcalcio Italiano, there's a problem from maybe head to toe, and just changing a coach is not going to change much potentially. I think you might have someone that could come in, step in, and I'm sure you will talk about it, but ultimately we have to it's about creating something, not for next year. Obviously World Cup is important, but what can we do for the next 10 years? Because this Italy team is not what it should be, one, and we're missing these star players. We were, for as far as nations, every decade Italy produced some top talent, and it feels as if in the last 10, 15 years we don't have anybody. We have Chiesa maybe that you say, but then even him, he's been gone for the past 2 years.
So I'm not going to disagree on that. It's obvious. Italy, we're not producing the Baggios, the Pieros, the Tottis. Everybody knows that. But I'm not buying that we don't have quality within this team. I'm not buying it. We have much more quality than North Macedonia. We have much more quality than Norway, than Switzerland even. So many of the games that we slipped up on. It's not too long ago that we were doing great in the Nations League. You remember some of the performances that we put in, going toe-to-toe with the best teams? We beat France not that long ago. So for me, it's not just because there is quality. I see quality. It's an underperforming team. It's a team that looks like they have no motivation to play. They're probably not happy playing for their coach. A lot of players play out of position at times, and he's just created this divide within the locker room that, for me, yes, Spalletti would be just the tip of the iceberg. Everyone knows the problems that are within Italian football, from young players not playing a lot, kids not getting their starts in Italy. That's clear. But right now, the most important thing is Italy going to a World Cup. That is the most important thing. And Spalletti proved to not give us any confidence that he could do that. And he needed to be sacked. And we need another coach to come in. The two names right now have been Pioli, but the favorite is Ranieri. And I'll go out and say I think Ranieri is miles above the best choice for this situation. Everything he did with Roma to get them back and be stabilized this season, everyone likes him. He creates happiness within the squad. He goes back to simple tactics. Everything he did with Roma was, let's take Angelino was playing as a center back. Let's make him play as left back. Let's not reinvent the wheel and just call up who deserves to be called up and get the most out of the squad. That is what Italy needs, and I think Ranieri is the guy to at least be a Band-Aid on a bad situation. What do you think?
I think we need to do two things. One, we need a short fix, which I believe it could be Ranieri, and then we need a long-term fix, which we can talk later. But for this, we have a year to get ready. I think after we saw what Ranieri did with Roma, some common sense, put the players in the right position, called the players, the locker room, he fixed the locker room. I think that Ranieri, being the gentleman that he is, and being the coach that everybody respects, I think that if you tell him, listen, we need you, this is an emergency situation, we need you for a year to help us. This is not a day-to-day coach, so it's not that you with Roma. I know you said that you don't want to coach anymore because it is that's the day-to-day operation. This is totally different. you're going to see this team in September. So it's a totally different job. If you want to work with Roma for the next couple of months, tell Friedkin what, as a consultant, what you think, and Gasparini, what they think they should do. In September, you get back to the national team. We need you for 1 year. And then after that, we need a long term, which is the federation. That's a little bit more complicated project. But the short term project is Ranieri.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think Ranieri, especially when you look at, the teams he's coached, right? It's a long list, obviously, but in recent years, look at Cagliari, a team that's destined to go down. He's able to maintain them in Serie A.
And he brought them back from Serie B to Serie A.
Back to Serie A. Roma, that was on a brink of I don't know what.
4 points above relegation when he joined.
Yeah, and was able to even miraculously get them into Champions League contention, because let's be fair, they were right there, where they should have never even been close to the left side of the standings. Then you look at Leicester City. He won the Premier League, versus the giants of the Premier League. So it's a guy that, he's gonna, as Gaetano mentioned, is gonna demand respect, and that's just him walking into the building. It's not him yelling at anybody or doing anything. He's just a class act gentleman, and he's going to make sure that, I think, there's a certain level of respect that he'll be able to get from all the players. And then even in his press conferences, he's not antipatico. Like Spalletti, Conte, all these guys, they can act a little arrogant and stuff. With Ranieri, he's just a lovable person. When there was times to be tough, he's tough. Then he's smart. He's very, very quick on his feet. And I think it's something that we need with this Italy team, as Gaetano mentioned this year. We have to get to the World Cup, and we need somebody that's able to do it. I would also say with Pioli, let's not forget that, with Milan, he handled, won Milan, right, as far as a big team, won the Scudetto, obviously, but also handled Theo Hernandez and Leao, two players that in these past 2-3 years have been problems, and the new coaches haven't been able to really manage. So I think also there, Pioli has this man management skill.
He doesn't excite me.
He doesn't excite me
doesn't
either.
Excite me.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Say, hey, he's not someone to just say no to. Ranieri for me is the number one choice.
I want to go all in on Ranieri.
Yeah.
I would do everything to convince him. And I'm also somebody that if you told me we were in this situation a year ago and I was begging for Ranieri to come, I would have called you crazy. I would have said, what are you talking about? How is it possible that we need it? But his skill set matches up for what the team needs. And sometimes you need to read the writing on the wall and see what he's been able to do in recent times. Fix a broken team. That's exactly what is needed. And it's a pretty beautiful story, because back in October, he said his dream was to end with a national team. He always wanted to, but he said, I'm not going to get the opportunity to. Italy was not a job that anyone thought we'd be sacking Spalletti. He's 73 years old. He's 73 years old, and we're in a situation where he was retired already. He came out of retirement to save Roma, and now he could potentially be coming out of retirement again to save the job that he's been begging for his entire career. He was always overlooked. He's overlooked because he was a journeyman. He went to teams like Monaco and brought them from League Two to Ligue 1. Or he did it even with Valencia. He did it with Cagliari the first time around. He took them from Serie C1 to Serie A. So I think that with all of this being said, Gravina, who we could have the conversation about him, because it's kind of crazy that a president who we missed out on a World Cup, we made so many mistakes over the years, nothing has gotten approved. He still has a job. He's still able to run the Italian Federation. It's like if a CEO bankrupts a company and then you still keep the CEO. It doesn't make sense that he's still there, but he needs to go all in, make the situation as best as possible, get Ranieri, because we have an uphill battle. Even if we win all of our games, we have to outscore Norway. Norway also, we need to beat them. That's number one. Hopefully they could slip up at some point and that would save us. But just the thought of going to a playoff again, this team is so mentally weak. That's one thing I'll say. I don't agree on the talent. This team is mentally weak. Whenever, I remember, I think it was Barella who said the game against North Macedonia, they were all scared. they were all scared to play. To me, that doesn't make any sense. To me, this is a different generation of Italian players, not just for the skill, but also character-wise. It's so disappointing that they put their heads down and they're not resilient. And the moment they crumble. But if there's anybody that could do the job, it would be Ranieri. We all agree. Long-term solution, who are you thinking?
No, let's worry about this World Cup first, and then the long-term solution is I'm talking about the schools, how the young players in these clubs, how they've been trained. There's something that has to be changed. That from the bottom. When the kid is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I think the way that they train them is not the right way.
I had a conversation with an Italian national team coach at a youth level, a very high level. And he told me the problem in Italian football is the young coaches in Italy at the ages that you're talking about focus too much on winning to try to earn a bigger coaching job than they do on the skill of developing a talent.
Right.
So they're going for win at all costs instead of forget about your career. Your career is trying to develop players, and that's what we incentivize rather than other stuff. We also had a conversation with Cassano, and Cassano said, sometimes we're too tactical in the training sessions. We don't allow for creativity. We don't allow for freedom.
Exactly.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. And I have said it here on the podcast before. I read about how Barcelona, trained the kids. The kid that is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, there's no tactical. They don't teach any tactics. The kid they look for speed and skills. And then they tell the kid, just play. Because that's how you develop the creativity. If you tell a kid who's playing in the forward line, pass the ball, how is he going to learn how to dribble? He has to learn how to dribble. That's why also Cassano was saying, I was playing in the street. When the ball bounced, it bounced all over the place. So I had to learn the skills because it was not a beautiful grass field where the kids play today, where the ball rolls perfectly and you can't miss it. It goes, so that is exactly what Cassano and what Barcelona. Let the kids play. Don't tell them anything. Just look for speed and skills. When they get to 12 years old, 13 years old, you start teaching them some tactics. You start teaching them. And then you develop players like, the guy 17 years old, Yamal, the kid is unbelievable. Why? If you told this kid every time he got the ball to pass the ball when he was 10 years old, he wouldn't have learned how to dribble. I mean, the kid doesn't lose the ball. He knows where to pass the ball. He's very creative. And look at Spain. Spain, very young players, and they all got excellent skills. They do not show you the ball. You looking for the ball, and you're running like a chicken without heads, and you don't know where the ball is because how quickly these guys they pass the ball, the skills that they have, and then when they get to the final third of the field, you got players like Nico that he can dribble and he can cross the ball, and the guy got so much speed. You got speed on the wings, you got creativity, you got in the middle somebody that goes and see. They got everything. These players, they got everything from Spain.
Capello today said if Yamal was in the Italian youth system, he never would have been given an opportunity to play at a Serie A club.
Yeah, of course. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you need to start from the young players. And a lot of the federation, they went through it. If you remember Holland, 74, 78, they went to the final to the World Cup.
Germany.
For 20 years, you never saw the Dutch again. And now they're coming back again. You need to change something at the youth level. You have to. Otherwise, you do not develop these players that we had in the past, like the Piero, like Totti, like Maldini, like Pirlo, Donadoni, with a lot of Conte, with a lot of creativity that they know how to, to create something.
Yep.
So, and I remember that the Baggio told me, he goes, I was working for the federation. He goes, I wrote a book. He goes, the book was this big. He goes, but they never allowed me to implement my project. He goes, so that I left.
Well, that's in and of itself is crazy. You have a guy like Roberto Baggio who's saying the way things should be And you see how disinterested he is in even being involved, because he's not a guy that's going to be a yes man. He's not going to be a guy, oh, I'll put my face on it and then a project fails. If he's going to be part of something, it's going to be to actually make change. But the people at top in Italian football, they don't even want this change. It's for them, it's about getting elected another year. It's about making God knows what else.
And, we always talk about there are too many foreigners. Okay, even in Primavera, there are too many. So 60% of the Serie A is foreigners. Only 3% of the under 21 play in Serie A. So we always talk about that. And then, yeah, that's true. I would like to see maybe in Primavera a lot more Italians.
But they have to earn their place.
But then I look at it at the other federation. Spain, I mean, if you look at Argentina, all the players from Argentina, they don't play in Argentina. All the players from Brazil, they don't play in Brazil. All the players from Holland, they all leave when they're 18 years old. Switzerland, nobody plays in Switzerland. If you're good at 18, you leave. So I was thinking of Casadei, right? Casadei, the kid, he was good. So what happened? So he went to play in England. He played in Chelsea. Mm-hmm. And then he was good enough, so he came back to Serie A. So if you're good as a young player, people will look at you and people will select you, and then you can reach the national team, which he did. He reached the national team. So if we have somebody that is young, I understand that sometimes the other federation, they look and they give him a chance, and we don't give him a chance. So I would like them in the Primavera to give him more of a chance to play. But if you're really good, you're going to make it.
That's why the foreigner thing to me makes no sense. In Italian play, you have to be good to play. If there's not that player there,
right,
then they wouldn't play. It's our fault. It's the Italians' fault that you're not stepping up and you're not playing. Whether that comes at 7 years old, 8 years old, 9, 10 years old, either way. They want to play good players. The one problem I do think with the under 21s is in Italy, we value experience maybe more than any other nation, more than any other top nation. That's for sure. There's something with us that maybe it's the pressure, maybe it's the way the newspapers will write about a player, but it feels like anytime a youngster makes a mistake, a coach right away, they'll get dropped, or they don't give them that ability to make mistakes like other nations allow them to make mistakes. We're always relying on the older, more experienced guys. And while you do need a balance, I'll agree with that. There's definitely something to be said about us culturally in Italy, not knowing that a 17-year-old kid, if he's going to play for Juventus, he's going to make mistakes. It comes with the process. Otherwise, don't complain that you don't have really good talents if you're not willing to work through some of those issues.
Yep. Well, listen, culturally, we know in Italy, what it's always been about is the result, right? So I think that's probably the biggest part within Italy. It's, I'd rather win 1-0 dirty than lose and play beautiful football. There's only been a few coaches that maybe would have opted for the other thing. Gasperini, Zeman, these type of coaches. And, obviously you see the players that they've been able to develop, right? So I think you need to have that mix, as you mentioned, where you have some young players. Look at, I know we said the Italian culture or the Italian coaches, but look at Milan this year. You weren't getting anything. Camarda is sitting on the bench every single game. Liberali. These kids, I'm not saying you have to start them and play them 90 minutes, but throw them in. Put them in. At this point, right, unless you're going for Champions League or you're going to win the Scudetto, there should be no fear. And I think in the past, I know we say about experience, but then at that point, Cassano never plays. Totti never goes in. The list goes on. Nesta, all these players, they went. Maldini, they didn't. Bergomi played a World Cup at 18. Bergomi, okay, won a World Cup, 1982, won that World Cup at 18 years old. So yes, I know the grand scheme of things is always, we don't want to risk burning the player, right, in Italy. But in the past, there's been players that have played at that young age. So I think it's more so, what I noticed, and obviously the excuses always are, but there's nobody playing in the streets. But why? In Spain, in England, in Germany, they all play in the streets. They don't have technology where they are. Of course, they're on their phone and stuff like that. But I think as far as the football association, right, the Federcalcio, they've realized that there's adjustments to be made. The same way that, the game changes, right? you have to also adapt and how you are developing youth players. And I think that's something that Italy as a whole hasn't been able to do, that transition into this modern game.
But why do you think we haven't done it? Because it's not like we haven't had our wake-up calls. We had 2 wake-up calls. We missed 2 World Cups in a row. After the first one, it should have been red flags, alarm bells going off to do a change. After the second one, it should have been a non-negotiable. Why do you think nothing has changed? Or have we just not seen the results of those changes?
Personally, I don't think anything has changed because the same people are involved. So that's the biggest issue. The same people are involved, and if you have the politician in the place, of let's say a Roberto Baggio or someone else that truthfully is a soccer person, a football person, then you're gonna have the same results. The only way that you're gonna be able to bring forth something new is if you sit down and realize we have a problem, one, and then identify the problem and create a path. So far, not one person has mentioned anything. We are still here talking about just making the World Cup. Mm-hmm. It's much bigger than making the World Cup because in the next 2 years, the next 4 years, we're going to have the same issues. So ultimately, these are things that have happened in the past for many teams. Netherlands, as Gaetano mentioned, but even Germany struggled for 10 or so
Das
years.
Reboot.
So exactly. They created something and say, hey, we're going to go for it. We might not get the results in 1 or 2 years, maybe not even in 5 years, but we're going to make sure that we're going to be prepared and ready to go. And that's what they did. And so we see all over Europe, there's no longer, this player's from Italy, this player's from Kvaratskhelia is from Georgia. You got guys in Norway that Serie A teams are drooling over from Norway. So it's no longer the case, there's only good players in Argentina, only good players in Brazil, only good players in Italy. It's not the case anymore. It's really a global game.
I think there's so much money involved, and because it's not that complicated. You just go and look and see what they do in Spain, and so you go and see what they do in Argentina. You see what they do in Brazil, and where these young players, especially Spain, and see what they do. And you, if you don't have the creativity to do it on your own, you just copy them. But I think that there's so much money involved. I even heard that in Serie A. And in this youth players, some of the parents, they used to pay the coach so that the kids could play.
Yeah, it just came out actually.
Yeah.
Somebody paid 70,000 for Sampdoria Primavera.
Jesus Christ.
So these things that cannot happen.
Terrible.
That cannot happen at the youth level. Because you need to develop. Not that the guy goes and pays, and some of the coach, they took the money.
Yeah, sure.
No, it's a problem. It's a problem. It's a shame because we know what calcio means to Italy, right? And what a World Cup means to Italy. And you have a lot of these players that, they're kind of getting lost in the system. I think even if you look at Italy's, U17s, U21s, they played some championships. They have a couple of players that have gone on to Borussia Dortmund. Inacio Pia's son is playing for Borussia Dortmund. There's a few players. Natali also went to Spain, if I'm not right. I think Spain. But anyway, there's been a lot of Italian players that have left Italy to develop further in other countries because they know that they're going to get the chance to play.
They should.
I mean, look, we have, Inter has an interesting striker, Esposito, right now. Okay, Pio Esposito. His kid scored, I don't want to lie on the numbers, but 15 to 20 goals.
He's the leading scorer in
Serie B. Okay? This kid should be playing in Serie A next year. And, to be quite honest, even with Inter, with all the competitions that we have, if you wanted to keep him, I would be for it. And obviously we have the Club World Cup. I hope they'll be able to utilize him in this tournament to see what he's got. But that was, part of even Marotta's announcing of Chivu was like, hey, we want to start playing some of these younger players. And the guys that we have in the Primavera, we have to have the courage to play them.
So speaking about Chivu, we didn't get to talk about it, but Inzaghi obviously accepted the offer from Saudi Arabia, $27 million a season for 2 years.
Not bad.
It's pretty good. I always felt like he was going to go there. And maybe you hinted at the rejuvenation of Inter. They've said that they need to focus on getting younger players. How do you feel about Chivu? Obviously, it wasn't the first choice. Fabregas was the first choice. Whether it was, well, we know Como was being hard on it. Whether Fabregas didn't push enough or he tried to push and it wasn't possible. What's your reaction?
No, I mean, the fact that Conte stayed at Napoli really created, or lack of, a domino effect. Because then a lot of maybe the coaches would have gone to different places, and Inter maybe would have been with another coach. But I think ultimately the message from Inter was, Fabregas was the first choice. That's clear. Como, with the project that they have, he's also a minority investor, no matter how small. And the fact that I think Fabregas felt attached to this project, right? Bringing him from Serie B, having a good first year, he didn't want to leave on this note. And I'm sure in the back of his head also, it's a team that just lost 5-0 in the Champions League final. There's a lot of changes that need to be made. Maybe it's not the right opportunity to go, right? So that's all I would say about Fabregas. Chivu, listen, I mean, we still have a lot to see with him. I know he kept Parma up, which is great, but it was, I think, too small of a sample size to really say, okay, this guy is great. The only thing I would say is that obviously Chivu was coaching the Primavera before going to Parma. So they know him. They know his style. Maybe he knows how Inzaghi coached, and maybe, a lot of the players have a relationship with him. And obviously, he knows Inter and the culture at Inter, being an ex-player. So time will tell how it looks. But I think the message is we want to go younger, want to have fresh ideas. We still have a core to build on, and we're going to see how this year goes.
It feels crazy.
It does.
It sounds insane. The fact that his first job was Parma a couple months ago, and granted, he did very well with Parma. The Versus team was bleeding goals. He shored them up. He was very flexible in his tactics. I remember specifically when he played against Inter, Parma always played in the same way. He changed it up. He put Pellegrino and he put Boni up top, two big center forwards, and it absolutely worked. So he's got a plan B. It's one thing that we've criticized Inzaghi for. He was willing to adapt. He read the games well. Both of his subs were the ones that scored against you as well. So he's been very good at that. He coached a lot of young players at the Inter system. But I still think it is a crazy, risky move for Inter. How it's going to work out, we'll see. What do you think about the decision?
And to me, it's crazy that next year we're going to go to the Champions League and we're going with Tudor, with Chivu, and with Juric.
That's crazy.
That's really, Juric and Atalanta. But we have so many good Italian coaches, and I don't know why they cannot be successful in especially in the top teams. No, I don't like it. I mean, he's going to pay Champions League. Okay, I understand the Primavera, but between Primavera and Champions League,
it's a big.
There's a big gap there, and you're going to have the character of the champions. Is very much different. Some coaches, they can do well with the young players, and they listen to them. They buy what they are selling, and they can do. When you get to the next level, it's not that easy.
It's not to say that it's not going to work. It's just risk compared to even when Conte left Inzaghi, when Conte left Inter, and you got Inzaghi. Of course, it was a risk, but Inzaghi was doing very well with Lazio. They were always punching above their weight. We had a really big sample size. With this, we just have a much smaller sample size. The Juric one is crazy, though. The fact that Atalanta replaced Gasperini with Juric, and my question is, what the hell are they going to say to justify it if it doesn't go well? Okay, yeah, if it goes well, okay, you sound like a genius. He worked with Gasperini before. But if you just look at his past experiences, if it doesn't work out, the fans are going to say, we got the guy that has the worst team in Premier League history. It's a fact. The worst team in Premier League history. Then with Roma, you look at the situation, and it's not to say that Roma's the best team, but when you look at what Ranieri was able to do with them, you say to yourself, Juric overcomplicated that. So yes, he's probably the most similar to Gasperini in terms of his philosophy and the way that he thinks and the fact that he worked with him. I just, again, see this as a high-risk move. even though I did like Juric in the past, I liked him when he was at Torino. I feel for him. I think he could have gotten a different job. But to go straight to Champions League football, to take over Atalanta, seems wild to me.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he got rewarded with the job, to be quite honest, because, obviously your stock can be high, and then in 1 year it could go tumbling down. So, he was one of the promising coaches, obviously, with Hellas Verona. Let's not forget he did a remarkable job. And then also with Torino, he followed that up. Maybe, the benefit, I'll give the benefit of the doubt with both Roma and the team with Southampton.
Yeah.
Both these teams, you're coming into, let's say a fire, and maybe he's not the right person to put out that fire, right? So he maybe needs the full preseason to work with the team, to work on his style of play, the players, as far as who he's choosing. So I think that probably played a lot into why Atalanta went after him. As you said, also the fact that he's very similar to Gasperini and that he's played under Gasperini. But for me, it is definitely a high risk just because last year was a terrible year for him. They start losing a couple of games and there's some issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The finger's going to be pointed at him.
Yeah.
And Tudor, the biggest issue that I see is not necessarily in keeping Tudor. I don't think that that's the biggest issue, because if you can't find a replacement, they went after, they made a list of who they're going to go for. They couldn't get them. I think there's no point in going after, who was that guy that they were going for? Marco Silva?
Yeah.
Was it from Fulham? For me, do you really go for something crazy? I would rather keep Tudor than go for something like that. That seems like what Milan was doing last year, where they would get Fonseca and Coates out. I don't think that's the right path. The issue is, for Tudor, now you just watch Juventus try to go after basically any other coach but yourself. How much backing do you get? And can Juventus really show confidence in a guy that you're basically saying you've been fourth or fifth choice on our list all year? They have to come out seriously and back him and say, we're putting all the support behind Tudor.
Because I think Tudor knows where he stands, right? So he's just going to, the same way as a player, right? I remember Stankovic with Inter. Mourinho wanted him gone. And then all of a sudden he, bought his respect, and Stankovic became a leader within that Inter locker room and with that Inter team to go on to win the treble. So my point is, Tudor, he's got to believe in what he's able to do. Ultimately, the players have to believe in Tudor. And if they get on to a good start and then he's able to coach this team the way he wants to, I don't see him being the real issue on this team, to be quite honest. Especially for the fact that you don't have anybody that can come in and you say, okay, this is definitely the guy.
Yeah.
If you can tell me this guy is definitely the guy, then at that point, you go after
Like
him.
if you had a Conte.
If you had Conte, then...
If you had a Conte, okay,
Sure.
I would understand that. But when you don't have that and you're starting to look at all these different plays, I think better off just keeping Tudor.
Yeah. It's just, the only thing is with Juventus, it will be another year where it's anno zero. Like another year where you're starting from scratch, and we'll see how this coach goes. And really, it's been a while that since Juventus has won. When was the last time? It's been at least 5 years, right?
Yeah, 2020.
So
when Ronaldo was there.
Yeah, so that's a long time for Juventus, especially not even to be in contention for
And
Scudetto.
they're not going to be in contention this year.
You never know.
So far, especially with the moves that they haven't done on the transfer market.
Okay, but Inter, we don't know what to expect. Milan,
Napoli's
maybe
going
that they
back to
don't play-
back.
Napoli, yes, I agree. Napoli can go on and win, but after that, there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's Napoli and Bologna are the only two teams in the top 9 that are keeping their
coach.
teams. But I think Roma's improved massively by getting Gasperini. I think so.
You still have to see.
Yeah, but I will
Stuff
put them
to
in the
see.
guarantee. But either way, the best thing is for Napoli. They've gotten the stability. They're going to make the big moves already.
Mm-hmm.
I see them as very clear favorites to win the title once again.
Yes, I agree.
No, I agree. Juventus, it's a question mark. Inter is a question mark. Milan is a question mark. So you have a lot of question marks of the top 4 or 5 teams.
Yeah.
So Napoli, I think they're the ones that they're gonna, especially if they get a few players, They're going to be really good.
It's scary. And they have a serial winner. If they had any other coach, maybe you say they could slip up.
Right.
But Conte is not the type to slip up.
I actually think Milan got better. I think Milan, if they play their cards right this summer,
Because they play once a week.
yes, and you got Allegri who's going to be much smarter than what they've done in the past. If they play the summer right, they could challenge for a title too. They could.
There's going to be a lot of changes, I think. Already Reinders is on his way out.
Yeah, but you don't know if Leao's staying.
Leao's gonna stay.
Reinders is going. Who's going to
Reinders
be?
is gone.
Who's going to be the center forward?
The goalkeeper.
You know, the
There's
goalkeeper.
a lot of changes.
They have some question marks, which they have too.
I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. If they play their cards right this summer, there's a lot of talent that's still there. Again, Theo Hernandez is another one that we don't know if he's going to stay or not.
I mean, Milan is going for top 4.
Yes.
They want to beat in the top 4.
There's the same situation that Napoli were in last year.
Yeah.
There's the exact same situation. The goal is to get top 4, but with the question marks that I have around those other teams that we just mentioned, it would not shock me. Again, you got to see what they do in the transfer market, but there's a lot of potential for this team to finish second place, if not try to fight for the title, I think, with Allegri.
Yeah, I mean, with Allegri and the fact that, like I said, they play once a week, it makes a whole lot of a difference. When you have
Modric,
rest
too.
and you have full.
They're going to get Modric, 39-year-old Modric. I like the deal, though. Playing once a week, again, you need experience. I know I just talked about
you, you, didn't want...
you need a balance. You need a mix between them. If you have the opportunity to sign Modric, you sign Modric. Same way I feel about Napoli. You have the opportunity to sign De Bruyne, you sign De Bruyne.
No, I can't disagree with that. The only thing is, can he go 38 games? That's the only issue. At 39, he can't be that focal point for Milan.
But he doesn't have to play every game.
He doesn't. But then who you have to play?
Yeah, they got $70 million from Reinders
They got to invest it.
that they need to reinvest within the rest of the squad. And if Magnan goes, there's an $18 million offer from Chelsea that they've been trying to get past the line because he's got an expiring contract and he's threatening to leave for a free transfer.
Leao another 70 million.
Lau, I don't think Lau's going anywhere.
I know Bayern. They said they were looking at him, but I don't know how true it is.
They say Allegri really wants to keep Lau, and he was great for Portugal.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything we missed?
There's a lot of confusion when it comes to coaches in Serie A.
There
Even Fiorentina doesn't have a coach. Palladino, he resigned.
Thiago Motta doesn't have a job.
Not yet.
So
Pioli is a question mark.
Yeah, Fiorentina will get screwed. They want Pioli. So if Italy gets Pioli, now Fiorentina really has no other options.
But is he free from Saudi Arabia?
No, I think they need to do something with his contract.
yeah, I think the biggest issue is the taxes because you have to stay there 2 years.
Oh.
That's the biggest issue with Pioli.
Okay, I didn't realize
so,
that.
like, he can rescind the contract. That's not the issue. Probably they come to a gentleman's agreement. But the fact that the 2-year taxes, that takes a toll. All that money, you might as well be able to recoup it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they hate him over there. Every time we post something about Pioli, it's all fans from Saudi that are writing, take him, please. Get rid of him. Yeah, they haven't been happy with it.
Well, now they got Inzaghi. Now they're happy now.
Osimhen's gonna be on his way.
No, Osimhen rejected.
Osimhen
Again, they said they relaunched it.
He rejected a second time.
He doesn't want to go.
Where is he going?
Osimhen's a mess. I'm surprised everybody is not going for him. $70 million for a striker that was top goal scorer a couple seasons ago.
That's what happens. But that's why I said when it comes, your stock is high at one point, and then the next year, you kind of get lost.
I mean, he's going to find a home. I don't think it's a
Talking
problem.
about staying at Galatasaray.
Some of either the English team, they're going to pay.
I mean, Napoli's got to have to figure out a way to sell him, not recoup money, but for them to be able to have some spending money.
The thing is, nobody's going after him. Arsenal is going after different strikers. Chelsea, even Man United. All three of them are not taking Osimhen seriously, which is surprising to me. I know Chelsea had a problem with him where he was asking for too much money.
No, he'll find a place. If it doesn't go to Saudi Arabia, somebody's gonna pay.
A player of that quality can't go to Saudi Arabia. Osimhen, it would be a shame.
I know, but They're willing to pay 70 million for Leao. They'll pay 70 million for Osimhen.
I would think so. No way he goes back to Napoli, right? No chance.
I think that bridge is burnt.
No. I think that ADL is looking for that 70 million.
Oh, yeah.
Show me the money.
Yeah. No, but I think they won without him.
Yeah.
So what's,
Won with him.
Sure. But you'd rather have the money in your pocket than have this toy that you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Where's Haaland going from Man United? Højlund.
It seems like Inter really wants him.
Yep, they're saying it.
Yeah, if
I don't know
he,
why.
how much?
It's probably a good discount.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got to be 40, 50. I wouldn't touch that. I would tell Man United, you got to give me on loan or a really good price.
I don't know.
We'll see. It's going to be interesting. When do they start with the market? In July?
I don't even know.
I think they open in July. Well, right now
it's open now for the Club World Cup, but then July 1st will be the
right. Right now we'll concentrate on this World Cup, and we'll start next Saturday, and then after that we'll figure it out.
Hopefully by the time everybody's listening, Italy has a coach. Because right now the position is vacant. We need to close a deal for Ranieri, and I think he's going to push. I know a lot of Roma fans are mad at us saying, oh, he's got a job, let him stay at Roma. But they're saying that he's going to be able to do both, if anything. So, for me, I have no problem with that. And I think he's professional enough to not let it affect whoever he's going to bring in the Italian national team. At least I would hope.
I agree. I don't think there's going to be a real issue. Obviously, every coach has their favorites, right? You have your players that you want in the locker room. But he's going to, I think, be able to see the talent list and say, okay, these are the best guys I got to bring with me. It's also time, unfortunately, there is no time. He has to get into qualifications right away. You don't have any practice with these guys. So you don't even get a chance to really look at everybody, live.
Well, you can look at him. He knows the Serie A very well. I mean, he knows all the players. He saw them this year, like the whole year. He was on the bench, so he knows exactly, who he wants. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Ciao, ragazzi.